Here on The Colour of Country Life, great to catch up with Agriculture Minister Dugald Saunders. Minister, you've had quite a busy week actually with the ministerial meeting of Agriculture Ministers this week.
Yeah, absolutely, Ricky. It's been a busy week. New South Wales Farmers Conference has been on this week, which I attended and talked a lot about biosecurity and the need for us to remain very vigilant. And at the forefront of that, I guess, is foot and mouth disease. It's become really the focal point for biosecurity for all states, and we did have that all agricultural ministers meeting on Wednesday afternoon, where I took forward the plan around a national collaboration on this, which was agreed to unanimously by all other states, which was fantastic. Basically calling for a starting point which has never been able to be reached before. So we now have that. We have that agreement that is a national group. We will work together, and our departments will work together on how we then formulate a plan. And I think government's role is very much to help outline what we think can work as far as governance and also support for producers. And then we need to be working pretty hard with those producers and all of the industry stakeholders to make sure we get things right around how we can start working on sheep electronic identification and closing all of those traceability links that at the moment we just don't have.
Yeah, and in fact, speaking of the New South Wales Farmers, incoming President Xavier Martin did have some great words to say about yourself and your government and the proactive work you've taken on biosecurity. On that sheep identification front, it's taken a while for that to get off the ground, but now I guess there's been a recognition that it's, like you say, one of the holes in our detection, I guess, or tracing systems, so that if we did have an outbreak in Australia, we can trace down exactly where it is.
Exactly, and look, the decision around moving forward with this that isn't one that any of us have taken lightly. I mean, I first called for this earlier on just to say that we need to be having the discussion in a meaningful way. I heard back from industry their viewpoints, and there will be some producers who'll still be feeling like that they don't want to be part of an electronic ID system. But at the end of the day, what Foot and Mouth is showing us is that as a country, we need to be moving in that direction. Otherwise, we simply won't have market access at some point in the future. So we know it will take some time, and that's a good thing for producers to know that there will be a time frame here where they can, find out all they need to do, be involved in those discussions before they actually have to take part in a program. But in the meantime, they can be learning everything they need to do. We will have DPI and local land services staff working with producers at the ground level to make sure everyone's aware of what it might look like for them. And then we've got a plan to move into that next generation, which will rely on traceability of individual animals for sheep and goats like we do for cattle to make sure that we can tell that story to the rest of the world.
Well, I talked with Sheep Producers Australia earlier today, and we talked about how it would be paid for. I'm not going to try and draw your government or any other into that, but there was early on, I think, in the beef system, a subsidy. But I guess there's other benefits that could be realised in economic terms from a traceability system, such as that concept of provenance and being able to demonstrate the welfare standards of the farm where the animal's been raised.
Absolutely. And literally the marketability of your animal. So you can have your meat values or your wool values, whatever it might be, your muscle score indexes can all be linked to your electronic tag. And look, the way that digitised records work is you can call up an individual animal in a paddock at any point in time and show a buyer who might be with you on the other side of the world. It doesn't matter where you are. You can identify an animal and talk about their values and why he as a buyer or she as a buyer might be interested in that animal. So that sort of connectivity is what will be expected in the future. Somebody put it really well actually to me the other day, saying we don't send faxes anymore, we use our mobile devices and we use data. That's what this is about. It's about making sure that we have a pathway to the markets that we will need to have in the future and provide different ways of marketing products from an environmental perspective, from a value perspective, and I guess overall from the quality of the product you're selling as well.
Now, Minister Dugald Saunders, before we move on to talking about Varroa, might getting an update on that, I just thought we've been checking in on this one as well, because there has been some media coverage about foot and mouth disease that might be a bit irresponsible in a sense, because there is no case within our livestock herd in Australia at this point in time. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there were some fragments found the other day, one at Melbourne, one at Adelaide. And look, the fragments were not active fragments, just to clarify. So our disease-free status remains absolutely 100% intact, and anyone suggesting anything else is incorrect. But what it does highlight is that we do need to be vigilant. I've been calling for the foot mats embedded with sanitation products to be at our airports, both here in Australia and Indonesia's been my main focus actually, and Bali specifically. I'm pleased to see we've got some movement there. I'm still calling for 100% of bags. For travellers coming back from hotspots like Bali, you should expect to have your bag opened, your shoes checked and cleaned and sanitised if required. That should be part of what you expect if you're going to Bali for a holiday. I think until we're doing that, we're not quite there, and I'm encouraging the federal government to keep on doing all we can at their level to make sure that that happens.
All right, now just an update, if you don't mind, on the Varroa mite situation. Talking with the New South Wales Farmers President, he said he understood that it's largely contained at this point. Is that where we're at with that one?
Yeah, look, it is, and at where we are at the moment, we've got 41 infected premises currently, and we've been working pretty strongly and pretty well with all of the industries involved in bees, and there are commercial, there are recreational, pollinations involved, honey obviously, and literally what we're doing at the moment is still working technically that we think it is feasible and economically beneficial to eradicate Varroa mite from our shore. So that is still what we're doing. So we're still doing strong surveillance work. We're still doing work with individual beekeepers each and every hour of each and every day. And we still need people to keep coming forward and telling us what they're doing, where their hives are, if they're not registered, to be registered. All of that sort of stuff makes a massive difference. But we've also found a way to move forward. So as of Wednesday, we've got permit systems in place to allow beekeepers outside of those biosecurity zones to actually move hives and take part in pollination if they go through a set of requirements, including doing alcohol washes to test for mites, completing online surveys around where their hives have been for the past 2 years, but also doing an online course through Tocal to make sure that they're actually ticking all the boxes we need them to. They'll need to use miticide strips and sticky mats when they're in a pollination area, and we will have an extra 26 compliance officers on the ground checking the beehives and also working with producers to make sure it's all going well.
Yeah, that's important when we look at the... you couldn't get much more removed from Newcastle than over down near Buronga in the Mildura-Sunraysia region of Victoria. The Nationals member Anne Webster expressed frustration that pollination for the almond harvest in Sunraysia often relies on New South Wales hives. They're so close, but until that restriction is lifted or eased in that way, they're not available.
Yeah, and look, Victoria's taken some decisions of its own around closing borders and that sort of thing. I think there will be probably some difficulties for some of the Victorian producers around that, but we have very strict protocols in place around how our hives will be allowed to move. We will have lots of inspections happening, and actually at the end of the day, I think this is a starting point for recognising that we probably need some better traceability on hives, particularly for commercial hives, and this is the starting point of that. We will know where all of these hives are. So beekeepers themselves will be used to us knowing and working with us on that traceability from now. So that's probably a good thing as to how we can make sure that we're prepared for the future and anything else that might occur with bees, because the pollination is just one part of that life cycle that we take for granted. But from everything down south, the almonds and stone fruit, you move north, we've got berries of all kinds up north, we've got nuts of all kinds. It's overall passion fruits, melons, apples, pears, you name it. We rely a lot on bees to do that work, so we've got to be able to move forward, which we're now doing.
Agriculture Minister Dugald Saunders, thank you so much for joining us and giving us those updates today here on Flow.
Good on you, Ricky. Nice to talk to you.